Well, good morning, everybody. This is the North Affair podcast, Conversations Without Barriers. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. It is 9 a.m. here on the 15th of March. I hope everybody is having a good weekend. Now, thank you for joining me. Now, I just got uh, I just didn't get it yesterday. notification, a notification from Podbean. Starting May the 18th, there will be no more live streaming my shows as I'm doing right now. It'll be fully discontinued late June. I still will be able to do a recording, just not live. That pisses me off because the whole point of me coming out here doing a podcast is to have listeners like yourself come in here and listen to me live. I started this podcast back in 2019. So it's kind of disappointing. I'll only be able to record and then upload the episodes. That's a real shame. It really is. Now, I did put together a episode for today. Now I can't find the goddamn thing. Isn't that crazy? So anyways, the hell happened here? Checking out my apps here to see if I can find the goddamn thing. Oh, here it is. Here it is. All right. So, things are getting really tough out there. Things are getting tough out there for a lot of people. Food prices are rising. A little while back, I was reading an article, and it was about how much a family of four would be paying for groceries this fiscal year compared to 2025. Now, in 2025, they estimated that a family of four would spend $16,500 annually on groceries. Beginning the fiscal year of 2026, families of four will spend on an average of $17,500 this fiscal year. Now, we know what's going on in the Middle East with the with the war. That drives up costs, and you probably notice that at the gas pump. Drives up costs in many different ways, and it drives up costs in transportation. Transportation, and in the trucking industry, fuel costs rise, and the transportation cost rises as well. Because trucks don't run on air, they run on fuel. Now, this may be short term. Who knows? And it makes it a lot harder for people to feed their families. So we're going to take a look at the food bank usage here in Canada. We're looking at the food banks as a diagnostic tool. So because you want to understand how a country is functioning. And I don't need to start with the GDP or the stock market performance. The system that we rely on now, food banks have been running now. They have to be going for at least 45 years. They started back in like 1980. Something that was supposed to be temporary. Canada has reached the highest levels ever recorded. In March of 2025, there were 2.17 million visits across the country. That's 2.17 million moments where someone couldn't afford groceries and had to ask for help. And when you compare that to where we are just in a few years ago, the scale became even clearer. Food bank visits doubled since 2019, a 99% increase in 6 years. That's not a temporary spike. That's not a pandemic hangover. That's a structural shift in how people are surviving. And to understand why this is happening, you have to start with the pressures that shape daily life: housing, wages, and the cost of essentials. Of course, now fuel going up. These are the forces that determine whether a household can stay afloat or whether it starts slipping. And over the past several years, those factors have been moving in one direction: up. While incomes and supports have stayed flat, housing is the biggest pressure point. And across the country, rents have risen faster than wages, faster than inflation, and faster than any social support program has been adjusted to match. And in many cities, a one-bedroom apartment now consumes more than half of a full-time worker's take-home pay. For people on social assistance or disability benefits, the math doesn't work at all. When housing takes that much of household budget, everything else becomes fragile. Food becomes the first thing to get squeezed because it's the only flexible category. You can't negotiate your rent, you can't negotiate your hydro bill, and you can't negotiate the cost of transportation. If you need to go to work, but you can still reduce what you eat. You can skip meals, you can stretch groceries, you can rely on food banks, and that's exactly what is happening. The second pressure is wages. Even with employment levels relatively stable, the type of work people are doing has changed. More part-time jobs, more contract work, more gig work, or jobs without benefits and wages that haven't kept pace with the cost of living. And one of the most telling statistics from the national data is that 19% of food bank clients list employment as their primary source of income. That's almost 1 in 5. In 2019, that number was 12%. So that number of working people relying on food banks has already doubled. That tells us something fundamental. Having a job is no longer a guarantee that you can afford food. And when employment stops being a path to stability, the entire economic model starts to break down. The third pressure is the cost of essentials. Food prices have risen sharply over the past several years, driven by supply chain disruptions, global instability, climate-related impacts on agriculture, and corporate pricing decisions. Transportation costs have risen. Insurance costs have risen. Everything that supports daily life has become more expensive. And while inflation has slowed in some categories, the cumulative effect remains. People are still paying far more than were just a few years ago, and their incomes haven't caught up. When you combine rising housing costs, stagnant wages, and higher prices for essentials, you get a situation where households are constantly one unexpected expense away from a crisis. And for many, that crisis arrives quickly. It shows up at the grocery aisle, shows up when the rent increases, shows up when the bill is higher than expected. It shows up when paychecks don't stretch far enough, and eventually it shows up at the food bank. Food banks themselves are under enormous strain. They were never designed to be a core part of the social safety net. They were built as emergency supports, temporary, last resort options for people in crisis. But today they become a regular part of life for a growing number of Canadians. In March 2025 alone, food banks provided more than 4.5 million meals and snacks, not including the hampers and grocery packages that make up the bulk of their work. Many food banks reported running out of food before the end of the month. Others had to reduce the size of hampers or limit how often people can visit. Volunteers are stretched, donations are stretched, budgets are stretched, and the demand keeps rising. And the graphics of food banks usage tells even a deeper story about how the system is functioning. March 2025, an increase of 340,000 child visits since 2019. Seniors now represent 8.3% of clients, up from 6.8% in 2019. Single-person households are the largest group, making up 42% of all clients, and 40% of all food bank users rely on social assistance or disability supports as their primary income source. These numbers show us that the pressure is not limited to one group. It's not limited to one person. It's not limited to one demographic. It's broad, it's structural, it's national. So for single adults make up the largest share of clients. That's not surprising when you consider how the system treats single people. With the social assistance rates for single adults are the lowest of any household type. They haven't kept pace with the cost of living. Disability supports are similarly inadequate, leaving people with fixed incomes that don't come close to even covering basic expenses, when rent alone can exceed the total monthly income of someone's on assistance. Food security becomes really hard. And it's not a matter of budgeting, it's a matter of math. Children represent another major part of the picture. 1/3 of all food bank visits are for children. And that number has sharply uh, risen since 2019. And this isn't because parents are suddenly less capable or less responsible. It's because the cost of raising a family has increased dramatically. And while the wages and supports have not, childcare costs remain high. Housing costs have risen, food costs have risen, and families are absorbing these increases without any meaningful adjustment to the supports that are supposed to help them. And when families are forced to choose between paying rent or buying groceries, the consequences show up in the food banks. Seniors are also increasingly represented among food bank clients, and many seniors lived on fixed incomes that were set years ago and have not kept pace with inflation. As the cost of essentials rise, their purchasing power declines. Some seniors face additional challenges, such as increased medical expenses or mobility issues that limit their ability to shop for deals or travel to more affordable stores. And the rise in senior food bank uses is a sign that the supports designed to protect older adults are no longer sufficient. Another important trend is the rise in working poverty. As mentioned earlier, nearly 1 in 5 food bank clients are employed. These are people who are working, often full-time, and still cannot afford basic necessities. This challenges the assumption that employment is a reliable path to stability. It also highlights the growing prevalence of low-wage jobs, precarious work, and employment without benefits. When wages don't cover the cost of living, people are forced to rely on food banks even when they are doing everything society expects them to do. Regional differences also play a role in food bank usage. In some provinces, the cost of housing is the primary driver. In others, it's the lack of adequate social assistance or the prevalence of low-wage work. Northern and remote communities face additional challenges, including higher food prices due to transportation costs and limited access to affordable groceries. Indigenous communities are disproportionately affected by food insecurity, reflecting long-standing systemic inequalities. These regional variations show that while the national trends are clear, the Pacific pressures vary across the country. And food banks themselves are sounding the alarm. Many report that they are struggling to keep up with demand. Donations have not kept pace with the increase in clients. Some food banks had to purchase food to meet demand, which strains their budgets. Others had to reduce the size of hampers or limit how often people can visit. The volunteers are stretched thin, and staff are dealing with the emotional toll of turning people away or providing less than what is needed. And the strain on food banks is a direct reflection of the strain on households. So the rise in food bank usage is not just a story about hunger, it's a story about affordability, inequality, and the failure of systems that are supposed to support people. It's a story about the gap between what people earn and what it costs to live. It's a story about policy decisions that have not kept pace with the realities of modern life. And it's a story about the growing number of people who are being left behind by an economy that is not working for everyone. When you look at the data, it becomes clear the food insecurity is not an isolated issue. It is connected to housing policy, labor policy, social assistance policy, and economic policy. It's connected to the decisions made by governments at all levels, and it's connected to the broader economic forces that shape daily life. Food banks are the canary in the coal mine. They are the first place where the consequences of policy decisions become visible. And right now they are showing us that the system is under strain. $2.17 million Canadians across the country in 2025 used a food bank. That is just unprecedented. Now, wages for many, many years have stayed stagnant. Across the country, provinces and municipalities to determine what would be a livable wage. Not minimum wage, a livable wage. For an example, London, Ontario, and the province decided that $21.05 would be a livable wage for London. That may have been so 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but not today. An average one-bedroom apartment starts at $1,650 a month. $21.05 an hour is not going to go very far. And I wonder to myself, I'm thinking, okay, well, if $21.05 an hour isn't going to be adequate, then what would be a livable wage for London? It would come out to $32 an hour. $32 an hour. I think minimum wage is something like $17.85. Would be a minimum, is the minimum wage for Ontario. Other provinces across the country, they set their own minimum wage. Minimum wage didn't start to increase until about 8 years ago. 8 to 9 years ago. It's never kept up with the pace of inflation, ever. It's just a wage that the employers, that was the minimum that they were required to pay by the hour. Even if you were to make $21 an hour, that's not going to keep up with inflation. And with the social assistance programs, they have not kept up pace with inflation. An individual on social assistance, a single person, would get $750 a month. Someone who is on a disability will just get over $1,000 a month. So when the incomes provided by these programs is insufficient to cover rent, utilities, and transportation, people are forced to rely on the food banks. Not because they want to, it's because the system leaves them with no other option. This is not a temporary issue. It's a structural problem that has been building for years. Where people are ending up just finding part-time jobs, doing precarious work, contract positions. And it has created a situation where many people are employed but still unable to make ends meet. You don't have any benefits in working part-time jobs or other precarious work or gig work. It's not stability, and it makes it difficult for workers to plan their finances or build any kind of cushion. Even full-time workers are struggling. Wages have not kept pace. And the food security is a complex issue. But is it a unsolvable one? It requires comprehensive approach that addresses the underlying causes, not just the symptoms. Look, we've had the government call in the CEOs of the big grocery chain stores here in Canada and sit them down and ask them why the prices are so high. We've had the government say we're going to lower food prices. I'm sure you've heard this throughout the United States from your own government. We're going to lower food prices. Well, Mother Nature has a say in that as well. Droughts, costs, lower yields, the lack of rain. And it looks like this coming summer, when we eventually get to that, is going to be a hot, dry summer. Doesn't help the crops, doesn't help the farmers, doesn't help the food prices. So what we need to here is fair wages, adequate social assistance. It requires investments in the social safety net and a recognition that food banks cannot be the primary solution to food insecurity. And it requires a shift in how we think about economic stability and the role of government in supporting it. Things are getting more expensive to buy. Another thing that plays a significant role in your cost of living when every time you go to the grocery store, whatever the hell you buy, whatever's being imported into the United States, whatever being imported into Canada, tariffs. Donald Trump's favorite word in the dictionary, tariffs. Put an economic strain on all countries around the world. Tariffs are a tax, and it's a tax that the importer pays. And then those costs get passed on to the consumer. Now, you know that the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that the tariffs under the IEPA, the Emergencies Act, or whatever the hell Donald Trump calls it, were illegal. That money has to be paid back to all the importers in the United States. Billions of dollars. Of course, there are still tariffs on because he just goes under a different rule. You know, Canada is the United States' second largest trading partner. You know, back in 2019, when Donald Trump, when he was president the first time, Canada, Mexico, and the United States sat down and renegotiated a trade deal. Donald Trump, at the end of the day, said this is the best deal ever. Best deal. Donald Trump 2.0 gets back in office, starts going after Mexico, starts going after Canada, starts putting tariffs on other countries, the EU. Starts calling Canada nasty. Starts calling our prime minister governor. And people can't figure out why. People can't figure out why Canada's pissed off, why Canadians are pissed off. It doesn't help the economics now, does it?
Yeah, trucker. What's up, my brother? How are you? After a long time.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing fantastic, sir. Like, thanks for inviting me here.
Yeah, where are you calling from?
Uh, I'm calling from, the south part of India.
Oh, cool. Well,
Yeah,
thank you for
my,
coming on the
my,
show.
yeah, thanks for inviting me, sir. My brother, my cousin brother lives in Canada, the capital Ottawa, and he moved to Vancouver.
Okay.
Yeah, he work in IT company, IT, information technology.
Oh,
Yeah, I want to come to Canada. It's a big dream, it's the biggest country and so nice people, nice weather, nice culture, everything. So fantastic that place. You're a truck driver, right? I want to ask you one thing, like why the truck drivers, Punjabi guys are so everywhere. You can see everyone becoming a truck driver in like Canada. Punjabi guys.
well, you know what? It's stable work.
Yeah, everyone is
You know,
coming from
that's
India
why.
and going.
Yeah,
Like why? The growth is increasing, the Punjabi drivers increasing in numbers, like they're owning the trucks and they're doing the businesses, the transportation. Like you peoples are suffering, the Canadians are like suffering with that people.
well, I mean, not every like here in Canada, I don't know. Just I guess trucking isn't just it's not for everybody. I
Mm,
mean, they want to go to college, they want to go to university.
yeah,
They want to be doctors, they want to be lawyers. They want to
yeah,
big, big be big CEOs and things like that, and that's all in good. Everybody has a goal in
Right.
mind and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But others, well, we I mean, we still have thousands of truck drivers here in Canada, obviously, but you know, um, it's an easy job to get into, and it's consistent work.
Yeah.
The pay is pretty good.
Mm.
But other than that, yeah, that's why a lot of people, the immigration and stuff like that too, is slowing down, and
Yeah.
that's government, obviously, but because we're having difficulties like everybody is all over the world, right?
Yeah.
The housing costs and stuff
Yeah.
like
It's
that,
very
and
rising.
lack
Yeah.
lack of housing. So
Yeah.
even students that want to come, from India or forever to go to university
Facing
and
problems.
college here. Yeah, I mean that had slowing down as well. So Canada is cutting back on foreign students and everything. So
Yeah, nowadays it's very hard to go to Canada. The life crisis is very hard. Like you're a truck driver. Like how you compete with this weather? So cold weather, it snow falls, it's a minus degrees. How you go drive in that places? It's not easy, right? Like how you
no,
do, how you go and deliver that goods to other places.
it's not. Winter can be really tough.
Yeah.
You just have to drive accordingly,
Mm.
to be safe out there. So I mean, it's still winter here, but it's tough over the winter months trying to drive those big rigs, but you still got to take your time. So I've been doing it for many years. So, but yeah, it's a good job if people want to get into it, but you gotta want to do it. So, but yeah, so thanks for coming on the show live. Um, so, like I was saying, so the food banks cannot be the primary solution to food insecurity, and it requires more government intervention. We're going to figure out how we can get the costs down for groceries. It's one of the biggest driving expenses that we're going to spend money on, not just on our housing. We have to be able to eat. We have to be able to feed our families. How long this I don't know how long this war is going to be going on in the Middle East. I have no idea. Trump doesn't have any idea. He said he'll know when it's over when he feels it in his bones. That's what he said the other day. Now, what kind of fucking answer is that? I will know when I feel it in my bones. That's just absolutely ridiculous. Now, like I said earlier, um, starting, I guess it will start May 18th, I think. May the 18th, I believe. Podbean will be discontinuing live stream. What we're doing right now. It'll be totally inactive around June 18th. I still will be able to record an episode. And put it out there, but there'll be no more live stream. I don't know how you feel about that. I know how I feel about that. Because you're the listeners, right? You guys out there are the listeners. You guys choose whatever podcast you want to listen to. You want to listen to it live. What we're doing right now. Am I wrong? Am I right? Can someone tell me? Yes, no? How would you prefer to listen to a podcast? Do you want to listen to a pre-recorded show or do you want to listen to a live show? You probably listen to a lot of pre-recorded shows. And maybe that's what Podbean is finding. You know, because you go search for podcasts, whatever type of podcast you like to listen to. And they're generally already been recorded. Some are AI generated. Now, I did some that were AI generated. But the point of me doing a podcast is coming out here and having you come live on my show. Call in live, talk to me. I mean, that was just one of the reasons why I started a podcast back in 2019. To figure out how this works. But unfortunately, I mean, we can do still live shows all the way up to May 18th, obviously. But after that, there'll be no more live shows. Yes, I will do recordings. After that, after May 18th, I will do recordings. I'll put my show out there. You can still go on Podbean and you can still listen to my podcast. It's just not this way. So I appreciate it. I do. I really appreciate every single one of you coming out here, picking my show to listen in live. I appreciate that. I really do. And I've said this before and time again. You, the listeners, are the podcast. I'm just the host. Meaning that without you, then there's no podcast. But I will keep doing live shows all the way up to the point where I can't do a live show, that I can only do a recording. And I hope after that you continue to listen to my podcast. So until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy the upcoming week. I wish you all the best. And take care out there and be safe. This is the North Affair podcast, Conversations Without Barriers. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening in. Thank you for following me. And like I said, we'll keep doing the live shows until I can't. And then I'll just be doing recordings. Thank you for being part of this show. Have a good weekend.